back a year ago when I prepared this for, 2 years ago when I prepared this for Haiti. So, without any further introduction, let me launch into this particular message, addressing man's greatest problem. His greatest problem. It's not ignorance. It's not illness. It's not poverty. It's sin. Man is undeniably guilty before God and thoroughly contaminated. This is what I'm calling, my words, man's miserable problem. Man's miserable problem. Now, by saying that man has this miserable problem and that he is undeniably guilty and thoroughly contaminated, I'm not saying that man is as bad as he can be. Every one of the books that talk about this particular problem of the extent of sin in man make it very clear man is not as sinful as he can be. And if you were to turn to Romans chapter 1, and you don't need to turn there, you would read in verse 18 that man is under the wrath of God. And yet, even being under the wrath of God and suppressing the truth in unrighteousness, that passage goes on to describe how men can get worse. And 3 times they are given over by God to greater measures of sinfulness. It also doesn't mean that man can do nothing in good in any sense. Just look at all the tragedies, like this most recent storm that's happened in the Philippines. And men do good to their fellow man. They find them, they help them, they give to them, they seek to care for them in the midst of such tragedies. Now, in the fullest sense, those are not good works, in that they will not earn them anything before God. They will not earn them salvation in any way, shape, or form. And as a matter of fact, even those good works we're going to see are actually tainted. So, in Pastor Martin's words, there is nothing to commend man to God legally, and nothing to move him to God personally. Man is guilty before God and contaminated by sin. So my first point, man is undeniably guilty before God. Undeniably guilty before God. And I say undeniably because it's plainly taught in the Scriptures. And it's one of the few things that I've ever taught at nursing homes where I've taught, and it just doesn't matter about anybody that I'm speaking to, but when I've gone to the nursing homes and asked the question, how many of you are sinners? They all put their hands up. They all know it. I've only met one person in my life who actually told me they never sinned. I actually sat next to a guy on the bus who told me he never sinned. And then proceeded to tell me how he redefined sin so that what he was sinning was not sin. But I couldn't convince him of that, for he didn't sin. But everybody knows it, and the Scriptures plainly teach it. Describing what Solomon found when he did his search for the meaning of life. One of the points that he said was, I have found only this, that God made men upright. God made them according to his standard, perfect. They had met the standard, they were keeping that standard, but they have sought out many devices. They are the ones who have deviated from that path. And so Paul, quoting the Psalms, could say in Romans chapter 3 and verse 10, there is none righteous, not even one. So we're guilty because we're unrighteous. We're not righteous according to God's standard. That means we're guilty. And everyone is. There is none who comes into this world that apart from Christ can say he is righteous. Not even one.